the rabbi answering. But go ahead.
So I started doing my brachas like in July, around my birthday. I said I'm going to up my brachas. I'm going to start doing brachas every time I eat and elevate my food. Right. But when it came to bread, I started avoiding bread only on Shabbos because the bracha for bread is so long. It took me half an hour to read it.
Really?
My Hebrew is very
But your
slow.
English is good, right?
My English is very good.
You should read it in English.
But I just got lazy, and it just it's laziness. So I'd only eat like 2 slices of pizza instead of a whole pizza. And I guess the intention was good in one way, that I just didn't want to eat bread unless because it's so holy that as I was doing the bracha. And then people on the table said, but there is for children the bracha, so there's a simple bracha.
Right.
But then I'm not a child, and Hashem knows I'm not a child, even though I feel like a child, because I'm starting all over again and actually like just a year.
Right.
What's the best option?
So I'll tell you something very funny. Ashkacha Pradas, it happens all the time, that the way God sets up with rabbis who have to give halachic rulings, that they throw the question at them in other ways before the question actually gets asked. They do research on it, and then when they get asked, oh, I just learned about this. So yeah, this is under ensuing research over the last 2 weeks that I've been doing with other rabbanim. Your exact question regarding a non-child who's like Baal Tshuva learning if they should say what's called Birchas Masan HaKatzer. Now the bad news is I don't yet have a final conclusion or consensus. But the good news is that this is the first time that someone asked this question when I started doing the research on the subject. So I see that the research is causing some in the waves of the so it's causing some effect. The bottom line is like this, okay? So there is a option of saying what's called Birchas Hamazon HaKatzer, which is basically you won't find it in a classic siddur. You won't find it in a Chabad siddur. I can send it to you by email, okay? Some Sephardi siddur may have it, but classic will not have it. And it's basically a short, abbreviated version of each one of the 4 brachas of Birchas Hamazon. Now, that is an option, according to Halacha, that you can do, either in a time of need or, as you're saying, you're not yet able to read all the Hebrew words. What I would suggest is the following: that you should, you could bench in English, by the way. You don't have to bench in Hebrew.
I do in English.
Oh, so you do it in English. So your question is?
But it's so like, I do it in English on Shabbos.
Right. So I would do the following. You should, every time you eat bread, a kazayas of bread, you obviously have to bench the whole benching, but you have 2 options. Either you can do the short version, which I can send you by email. It's like 8 lines. It's a short version of each bracha, except for the first one, which is the whole thing. The first bracha you should, can you say the first bracha in Hebrew properly?
Yes, of course.
Okay, so it's mainly the rest of them. Okay, so you can do the kitzur of the rest of them, or say the rest of them in English. What I would suggest is like this: every time you eat bread, choose one paragraph, like for a month, that you're gonna work on this paragraph in the Hebrew, and the rest you just do in English, or do the kitzur.
Yeah, I started that with the Shema. That helped.
So you have the option of switching off with the short version, the bridge version, or the English version. So that's your way out.
I just do one section a month. It's not bad.
Okay. But you shouldn't feel bad if it takes a few hours just to bench. The Amshon of the Rebbe, he benches for a number of hours.
It's true, I know. It's just a different way.
Right, no, I'm joking. I understand. Okay, we have a lot set up for us today. This is our final class on Purim before we start taking on Pesach. I know I shouldn't have said that word. Everyone breathe. Okay, so Amir Tzashem going to start, going to go through a number of the relevant halachas to Purim, with, of course, a focus on woman and Purim. In today's and tomorrow's day halacha, we actually have dedicated towards the subjects of: can a woman write a Megillah? Any good calligraphics? How do we call it? Someone who's an expert in calligraphy. Anyways, if anyone likes writing. So that was today's day halacha. You can look it up. And what we will discuss is a second regarding a woman's Megillah reading. That's going to be tomorrow's day halacha. Mirz Hashem. We'll discuss that as well in this class, and many other things that are very pertinent specifically to women in the Purim. So let's first begin with the Purim story, some Midrashim, to open up the appetite, as they say, and then we can move on to the halachas. Okay, so let's begin with, as we all know, the name of the Megillah is Megillas Esther. So the Purim story revolves around a woman. And of all the holidays, many of the holidays took, Moshe Rabbeinu did the Exodus, so that's Pesach. Hanukkah was a joint effort, so Purim is the holiday that the woman brought along, so to say. That's the woman's holiday, and that's the reason why that's brought down that in all the mitzvahs of Purim, we'll already mention this now, there's no difference in halachah men and women. Men and women have the same exact status, even though in general, as we've been learning in our course, that there's certain mitzvahs women are exempt from because it's time-bound, and obviously Purim is time-bound. But since the entire miracle took place, number one, for women, on behalf of women were also under the decree, and number two, by women, therefore they have the same status. In fact, the Pri Megadim, one of the poskim in the 18th century, writes something very interesting, that he says, since the Purim story took place through Esther, there's an argument that can be made that women are even more chayiv than men. But definitely there is no less of a chiyuv on women than men in all the halachas, unless we explicitly explain a difference for whatever reason we'll explain. So that's the first part, right? As we know that, let's go through some medrash on Esther. We'll first start with her predecessor Vashti, right? Who was Vashti? So Vashti was the daughter of Belshazzar. Belshazzar was the king of Persia at that time. He was the son of Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Persia, before the rebellion. The rebellion and the ensuing assassination took place years later by Daryavesh, who was and Koresh. Daryavesh and Koresh were basically partners. They overthrew the government, they overthrew the monarchy by assassinating Belshazzar, the son of Nebuchadnezzar. And Belshazzar's daughter was 9 years old at the time of the assassination. And Daryavesh, when he saw her, he took pity on her and decided to marry her to his son, who was Achashverosh. Achashverosh was the son of Daryavesh, and they took her in. Was Vashti a beautiful woman? I know that in the cartoons and the stories, she's always depicted as having freckles and a tail and being as ugly as can be. But the truth is that, and also the name kind of sounds, I think the name sounds like, it's like Cruella de Vil. It's like one of those really ugly names, Vashti. And, but in truth, the Gemara, it's a machlekes, but one opinion in the Gemara, and I'm sure the machlekes isn't, was she the ugliest or the prettiest? I'm sure it was she the prettiest or one of the prettiest? Lists her as one of the four most beautiful women that ever lived. Not just one of the four most beautiful women in Achashverosh's time, but ever in humanity. It lists the Gemara in Megillah, page 15a, Sarah, Rochav, who of course we know was the accomplice that helped the spies of Yeshua and ended up marrying Yeshua afterwards. Abigail, who was the wife of David HaMelech, one of the first, right? Was the wife of Navala Carmeli, and then he died, and David married Abigail. And Vashti. The Gemara lists Vashti as the fourth one. Now, why wasn't Chava mentioned in the Gemara? The Gemara says Chava was created by God. Couldn't God make the most beautiful woman in the world? How can she not be mentioned as part of the list of the top four? So the Gemara answers, you can't list her as part of a list because all humans in comparison to her look like monkeys. That's what it says, yeah. She was of a completely different caliber. So she wasn't listed as part of the list, but nonetheless we have here the machlekes. Now whether Esther is part of this list, well, once we're dealing with, was Esther considered beautiful? So in the pasuk, right, in scripture, in the Megillah, it says that she was. It says she was Yefas Ta'ir Yefas Mara, and that's the simple way of understanding why the king would choose her. I mean, it's common sense that she was beautiful. Nonetheless, and based on this, the other opinion of the Gemara takes out Vashti and puts in Esther, that Esther was really the fourth most beautiful woman in the world. However, the Talmud does bring an opinion, we've all heard of this opinion, which says that Esther had a greenish appearance, yirak rukas. We don't exactly know what this means, greenish. I'm not exactly sure. Sounds like someone who ate something that didn't sit well in their stomach. Their face turns green. I don't know. But it says that she had a greenish appearance. Some want to say that she had, like how Orientals are like kind of yellow. So maybe she was Oriental. I don't know. In any event, the Gemara then says, so why was she chosen? Obviously, you have to understand why was she chosen. It says that a string, chut shel chesed, there was a string of kindness hovered over her that made Achashverosh find favor in her and choose her.
Don't colors have a spiritual meaning to them?
Of course.
So then why isn't it like described as like a spiritual, like if it was green? Green is described as what?
I don't know. Ask your local Kabbalist. You can find many here in Tzfas.
So then that would be probably what it meant, no? For Esther, why she turned green?
You said you want to interpret it. Well, the Talmud's saying that she was not beautiful. That's what the Talmud's trying to say. Now, it used the term greenish. I don't know exactly what that means, but okay. It took her out of the list, right? So, why did Achashverosh become so angry with Vashti? What was her issue? What did she do? So we're reading here from the Midrashim. The guests were having an argument over which locality of women are the most beautiful, and each guest praised the woman of their region, right? The Iranian said Iran, the Iraqi said Iraqi, the Syrians said the Syrians, the Indians said the Indians, so on and so forth. So Achashverosh said, you fools, it's a Kasdian, which was his wife, was a Kasdian. And so he asked her to appear, and she intended to appear, the Medrash says. She wanted to appear, says the Gemara in Megillah. However, Hashem made a miracle and caused her body to spread with leprosy. Now, I'm not sure if this is the leprosy of the miraculous leprosy called saras, which is just like a skin lesion, or it's the illness leprosy, which is quite terrible. Either way, it doesn't look good. And then the second opinion is that the Malach Gavriel came along and did some plastic surgery and added her a tail. So she did not want to appear any longer for the king. Maybe that's what started the theory of evolution. Maybe it's this Midrash. So the Midrash records, this is recorded in the Yalkut Shemaini, that she actually, she didn't just say, oh, I feel sick, I can't come, I'm so sorry. She sent him the following very divisive message. I'm translating what the Midrash Yalkut Shemaini writes. Insane fool. This is what occurs to you after you drink. You should know I'm the daughter of King Belshazzar, son of Nebuchadnezzar. If my father were alive, you would not merit to even run before his chariot. And certainly you would not have been given to me for marriage, and now you want me to appear in this state. And when Achashverosh heard this, as you can imagine, in his drunk state, he became very infuriated. Did we go last week through what happened to Vashti? Did we discuss it last week? Okay, I don't remember. We didn't have a lot of time last week. So bottom line is like this, is that while it is understood from the simple reading of scripture of Megillah that Vashti was executed, I mean, you can imagine someone talking like this to the king in a drunk state, their head no longer remains attached to the body, but the truth is there are other approaches to what happened to Vashti. The Ian Yaakov, famous commentator on the Gemara, on the Agat of the Gemara, writes that Vashti indeed was not executed, and we don't actually know when she died. All that happened to her is that she was demoted from queenship, so she was no longer the queen. Now, he then goes on that approach and says that with this we can understand something very puzzling in the Megillah, which I every year when the Megillah is read, I ask, what? Come on, how come he's doing that again, right? Achashverosh, during the second meal, asked Esther, Mihu zeh ve'zehu, who can be such an evil person to decree to annihilate your people? The obvious question on that is that you, Achashverosh, you and Haman did this together. I mean, you knew about the plan. This wasn't done behind your back. So what do you get? First of all, you know who did it. You know you and Haman did it. And what are you getting so upset about? What are you getting so angry about that you're going to kill Haman? You wanted to kill the Jewish people. What are you getting so upset about? So the Ian Yaakov explains that there's some missing correspondence from this dinner that didn't make it into the Megillah, and that is that Esther told Achashverosh, well, do you miss Vashti? And he says, of course I miss Vashti, right? Even the next day the Megillah says, what happened to her? He missed Vashti. So he said, of course I miss her. So do you know what happened to her? He said, no, I don't know where she is. Well, guess what? One of your ministers secretly took her and is holding her in their home, using her for themselves. She says, really, who is this? Who? And then she pointed to Haman. It was Haman. So Haman Harasha secretly took Vashti for himself, and when Achashverosh found this out, he became infuriated and had him killed. So says the Ian Yaakov. This, of course, is not the only approach. The literal approach is that Vashti was killed that day or the next day, etc. The Gemara says an interesting dialogue occurred during the time of advice when Achashverosh was asking what to do. So he says he first asked, he had a number of Jewish sages as advisors that he first asked before his own Persian advisors. And he asked them what to do, and they wisely told him that since the Churban of the temple, right, 70 years, since the times of the destruction, they can no longer give advice on capital punishment. They lost the wisdom of capital punishment. So they sent him to go speak to the Chachamim and Ammon and Moav. Now the real reason why they said that was because they felt that whatever they would do would be no good. If they said, don't kill her, the king would be taken as an affront to the king, to the monarchy. You don't care about my honor. Of course you should be killed. But if you do kill her, the next morning when you become sober again, you'll become angry. So either way, you're doomed, which is indeed what happened. The Midrash says that the advice was given by the advisors of Media and Persia, by Paras Umadai, and the next morning, after she was killed, they were killed. So the Chachamim were quite smart in their politically correct answer. Okay, let's get back to Esther. So a little bit of what we know about Esther. First, let's talk about her uncle. Mordechai was one of the members of the Sanhedrin. He used to sit in the Lishkas Hagazis in the times of the Beis Hamikdash, and he was a member of Anshe Knesset Hagadola and lived in the times of Chagai, Zechariah, and Malachi. As we know, he belonged to Shevet Binyamin. However, his mother was from Shevet Yehuda. His mother was a Judean, even though he himself came from Shevet Binyamin. He was a descendant of Shimi ben Gera. And if you remember, Shimi ben Gera was the individual who cursed David, and David spared his life for several years until Shlomo HaMelech took over, and he became a descendant from that period of time. He was born in that period that David HaMelech allowed Shimi to live. He was also a descendant of Yehonasan and Shaul, and the Mekubalim write that he was a Gilgal of Moshe Rabbeinu. The word Mordechai comes from the term mar drar, which is the mar is musk. Anyone ever have musk?
Yes.
Real musk.
Beer.
You've had real musk? It's very expensive.
Only synthetic.
Oh, I'm talking about real musk.
No.
Real musk sells at $20,000. I think a pound, 20,000 a pound, or 20,000 for some. Well, some people eat it. Yeah. Some people eat it. It's mainly for fragrance, but there are people who eat it, who add it to food.
So it's like I studied for perfume.
Right. Right. But most perfumes won't have musk
No,
unless
they
it's
have-
expensive.
Why
Unless it's very
Because
expensive.
it's the smell is like from the deers when they're mating, kind of thing, and it's to attract.
It's the blood of the nostrils. They have buildup of blood in their nostrils, which congeals, and that blood eventually becomes a very, very one-of-a-kind fragrance. Yeah.
It's just
So it's just a nice fragrance. That's why people want it.
Nice.
nice.
Smell
It's
it. You think you're in Gan
amazing.
Eden.
Have you smelled it?
You think you're in Gan Eden when you
Oh,
smell
wow.
it.
It's amazing. It's like nothing in the whole world that doesn't exist.
Wow.
That's why it's so expensive. I told you, it's like $20,000 for a few grams. Okay, moving on. So Mordechai comes to the word mardrar, which is explained to mean that in his name is hinted to this fragrance of mar, the mar fragrance, which is the musk fragrance. Drar is also referring to Ketores. So basically, the idea that's explained in Chassidus of Mordechai, that Mordechai was representing of turning evil to good. Because what is the musk? Musk is blood, which is not kosher, and then becomes transformed into a good fragrance, which, according to many poskim, it even becomes kosher. You can even eat it. And many poskim hold you can eat musk. It's not a problem.
If you can afford it.
If you can afford it, yes. Or if you live in Tibet and you have the musk deer as a pet, then, then yes. So he represented the idea of bittul, of turning yesh into ayin and turning ego into nullification to God. That was his representation. So Esther. Esther was an orphan, as is brought down from her mother and father. She died. Sorry, her father died before she was born, and her mother died at childbirth. So she was born in the world as a yasam from both parents. The Midrash states something very unusual took place. This is the Alkut Shemaini, that they tried to give Esther to nurse from all the women, and she refused. She was a very stubborn baby, and Mordechai had no choice but to nurse her himself. The Midrash says, Hashem made a miracle, which does have, if anyone wants to think that this is scientifically impossible, that is unfortunately not correct. You have people that have an illness of this type. I call it an illness, obviously, it's what it's viewed as, but in Mordechai's case, it was viewed as something holy, where he actually nurtured Esther. And the reason is for her to have pure milk of a tzaddik. Her real name, Hadassah, right? Esther's real name was Hadassah. She was only called Esther in Persian by the Persians. That was her Parsi nickname. So in her Persian identification card, it said Esther, but her real name that they called her in school was Hadassah. What does Hadassah mean? I mean, the Hadass is the myrtle branch, which smells good.
Someone said they're all to do with fragrances, the names.
Yes, that is true. That's an interesting analyzation. Yeah, the Esther and Mordechai both represent fragrances. Yep. Okay. Was Esther married to Mordechai? This is an interesting question. So we've all heard rumors back and forth. What's the real answer? The real answer is that it's a debate. It's a debate in the Mefarshim and it's a debate in the Poskim, because we have to understand that when we come to write Shulchan Aruch, to write Halacha, we obviously look back to Scripture to understand different cases and base Halachas on what we saw in Scripture. So in the laws of Yeridea and the laws of Yargva Yavar, a person giving up his life rather than succumb to a certain sin, we have to study the case of Esther. How is it allowed for her to be with Achashverosh if indeed she was married? An Ashes Ish, a married woman, is not allowed, even on the penalty of death, even under threat of death, is not allowed to be with another man. So there's different approaches. Some actually hold that there's no Isser of Ashes Ish with a guy based on this. There's no prohibition of meaning that there's no you don't have to give up your life if it's a guy, if it's a Gentile. So there's different things learned based on this. Some hold that in truth she wasn't married at all. Some hold because of this she wasn't. You have to conclude she was not married. Otherwise she would have had to give up her life. The Chidah gives, I think, the most simple explanation that she was forced. Forget about the halachas here. You have to, she wasn't given a choice. She wasn't told either you come or we'll kill you. You're coming. They took her. They forced her to go. So there was no choice of either she come willingly or die. She was forced to go. That's why it says in the Megillah that when she willingly went after the 3-day fast, that's when she became Asur to Mordechai. Because until then it was under force. It was Einis, she never went willingly. Taisvis says a very interesting pshat. And there he says, Taisvis says that in truth, Esther never lied with Achashverosh until those 3 days. She was never intimate with him. She knew Kabbalah. She was Mordechai's niece and wife, according to the many Mefarshim. And so she would do what's called Shavuas Shade, which is brought in the Shulchan Aruch as well. We don't do this today. Don't practice this at home. Swear a demon to be at your behest and do what you want, like do your dishes, clean up for Shabbos, things like that. So she would do the Shavuos Shade. This was a very in thing to do back in the day. So she did Shavuos Shade, and while she relaxed and enjoyed life in her room, she would send the shade instead of her to be with Achashverosh. And his name was Maich. That was the name of the shade. Maich. Yeah. You don't like the name? No. That was the name. Yeah. Well, it refers to something in Hebrew, but the Mefarshim explained that was actually the name of the actual shade, was Maich.
Okay. Is it a female shade?
I don't know. I have not met him or any of his kind. That's one thing I can tell you. It is a good thing, absolutely. Till 100 years ago, 150 years ago, shadim were still very popular in Jewish folklore. There are many few chuvas in Romanian, Hungarian paiskim of a woman who was taken by a shade and then returned back home. Well, listen, black magic we can consider anything that we don't understand, but it's a special type of wisdom called hashbah shadim. That's what it's called. It's not called kishuf. Kishuf is usher for us to do. It's biblically forbidden for a Jew to do kishuf. It is not forbidden for a Jew to do hashbah shade. It's just quite dangerous. It's not advisable to do, even if you know how to do it. As it says, when a person starts off with shadim, they start up with him. So better that we don't know he exists, he doesn't know we exist, and that's the best way of life. Wow. But when you get him to do your dishes, then it's not so simple. There was a famous Paisik, a famous Rav here in Tzfas, who used to do hashbah shadim on a mass scale, and he didn't end up very good in the end. He died a terrible death. Anyways, bottom line is that this is not a golem. The golem is something else. The golem is something that's created from earth. We create a mute that's not a shade at all. It's nothing to do with shadim. It's not a hashbah shadim. That also used to be popular back in the day. We find shuvas of, like we would think of the tshuva would be, wow, like I saw a shade. No, the question, I saw a golem. The question was, listen, we have a golem in our shul as part of our minyan. Can you count for the minyan or not? That was the question. No, it was a real golem. It said the golem, he writes in the tshuva who created the golem. The creator was created by this and this individual. And I don't know if he can join the minyan. We have trouble with a minyan in the morning. Right. I'm sure many shuls can use that. The answer was he cannot join a minyan. A golem cannot join a minyan. It's a problem. Okay, but the mainstream approach, as is brought in the Talmud and other Mefarshim, is that indeed she was married. That is the Talmudic opinion for certain, that she was married. Esther was married to Mordechai, and she remained married and loyal to him all the way through until that third day event where she had to be with Achashverosh for the sake of the feast, etc. And the question was, did she get divorced afterwards before she was? So that's already another discussion. But as I said before, one of the answers of how she was allowed to be with Achashverosh was that it was not her, and she really sent a demon in her place.
Wow, she had some special powers.
Yeah, well, she was Mordechai's niece or wife, right? So
You wonder if you could tell the difference.
Well, that's what it says, that the shade. Well, this we know from many sources, that shadim have the ability to
actually look like the person.
Yes, they can make themselves appear like other individuals. Yes, correct. Let's see if we have time for another story. There's a story with the Ramban and the Rekeach, Bala Rekeach, Eliezer of Worms, who was one of the most famous Kabbalists in Ashkenazi Rishonim, wrote the Sefer Rekeach, lived in Germany in the 1200s. Student of Yehuda Chassid. And so this is a story brought down. The story is about over 500 years old. It was found in a manuscript in one of the Gnizas of Shuls. And that's how we have the story today of the Chevra Kadisha. Back then, the Chevra Kadisha was basically the diary taker of all the different famous stories and events. Today, it's, the blogs and internet or whatever it is. Back in the day, the Chevra Kadisha, that was one of their jobs. They kept all the manuscripts and all the history. So, in this story, the Bala Rekeach, it was the day before Pesach, he was in his daily tour in heaven, and he heard that they have two problems in Spain that they need someone to solve. Problem number one is that the Ramban, at that point, Moshe ben Nachman, was a great Talmudist, but he did not know any Kabbalah. He needed a teacher to teach him Kabbalah. So they needed someone to volunteer to teach him Kabbalah. Number two, they had a terrible Christian bishop that was in charge of the town that caused a lot of problems for the Jews, and someone needed to get rid of him. So the Rekeach, he offered himself to do both jobs. So the way the story goes is that the Rekeach at that point was in Worms. Erev Pesach, he baked his matzahs, he's got on his magic mat, he used the Shemus HaKadoshim, and he arrived in Madrid. He arrives in Madrid, Erev Pesach, an hour later, or however long later, and he walks in with his freshly baked matzahs into the shul. He waits for the Ramban. He waits for after davening. He's the only one left in shul. The Ramban offers him to eat by him. He eats by him, but he doesn't say who he is. He doesn't tell him anything. He eats by him, and he decides to make his own Seder on his own, because he did according to Kabbalah. So he didn't join the Ramban Seder. The Ramban had a Seder with all the great Talmudists and all the great Paiskim and Rabbanim and students, and he felt very offended that this guest had the audacity to separate himself from the Seder. But nonetheless, some guests are a little strange. We know that. So he took it in. At the end of the Seder, he went over to said, listen, you know, there's a street here in Spain, in Madrid, that it's forbidden for any Jew to walk. This was very common, unfortunately, in Christian lands. There were streets that Jews were not allowed to walk in. And if you do, you can get killed. So tomorrow morning, do not leave to shul on your own. Wait for us to all be up and all go together so you know how to go and won't walk through the street. Of course, the Rekeach did not listen and woke up early in the morning and went through the forbidden street and was caught. And this very evil bishop sent out, this was Pesach day, he sent out a proclamation that he would burn this Jew at the stake, and the whole congregation had to be there and watch. So they sent a messenger to the Rav, the Ramban, and the shul, and he told them all to gather. And this person is Mamash Amashugan. I told him, I warned him. He sees the guest there. He's by the within the wood to be burnt. And the bishop tells him, you have one last request. You have anything you have to say, last words before we light the fire. And he says, I want to tell the rabbi something. And he says, Rabbi, I'll be by your house for Kiddush in about a half hour. Please don't start Kiddush without me. He's out of his mind. And they burnt him. They burnt him alive. And everyone goes home very sad. The Jewish community is broken. And half hour later, who knocks on the Ramban's door? The Rekeach. Hey, what are you doing here? So he took him to a side room and he told him who he is, what he was doing here. He was sent to teach him Kabbalah, which he did, and he was the Ramban's teacher of Kabbalah. Ramban became a famous Kabbalist. This was his Rabbi, the Rekeach. And he also told him, what happened over there is I used the Hashbah Shadim to switch my appearance for the appearance of the priest, so really they burnt the priest. You won't find him anymore. He's gone. And that's how they killed two birds with one stone. This is the story brought down in the manuscript. It says he used Hashbah Shadim to make the switch of appearance, that he would look like the priest would look like him. So they wonder why he was fighting back against the ropes. It was the priest. Okay, as I said, this is a story written over 500 years ago in the manuscripts of the Chevra Kadisha. I don't remember which one, but one of the Chevra Kadishas of Europe. Okay, let's continue where we were. Once again, as we said, don't try this at home. Don't go to any, someone advertises, I do demon swearings to help you out, do your dishes, don't go to them, or to do anything else. It's a very, very dangerous activity. Most probably they don't know what they're doing anyways, then it's just a waste of money and time, but if they do, it's a very dangerous activity and we don't get involved in these things. Okay, let's do one more. How old was Esther when she became queen? So here we have a variety of opinions, as you may imagine, but all agree that the youngest opinion, meaning the youngest that she possibly was 40 years old. Others say she was 80, others say she was 74, others say 75. We have different opinions recorded in the Yalkut Shemaini as to her age, but she was definitely not a young woman at the time. Another medrash, an interesting medrash regarding Haman, is brought down that Hashem put in Haman's mind to make a gallows exactly 50 amas tall, because that was the calculation in heaven that they needed for there to be space for exactly all 10 children to be hung with the length of their bodies and a little bit of space in between each one. So Hashem implanted in Haman's mind to be exactly fit. So it says, the medrash says that he in the meantime is thinking of, hanging Mordechai, while in truth he was actually planning the hanging of his entire family on the gallows in this case. Okay, I want to go straight to the halacha, so we'll just conclude with two more points in the Midrashic section, and that is that the Alter Rebbe records in the Shulchan Aruch as well as other poskim that it is customary to celebrate and commemorate Haman's yahrzeit. When was Haman's yahrzeit? So Haman's yahrzeit is on the 16th of Nisan, which is here in Eretz Yisrael the first day of Chol Hamoed. In the diaspora, it's the second day of Yantif, of Pesach, and you're supposed to make an extra special meal. Obviously, we're not commemorating Lilei Nishmasei, it's for Yeridas Nishmasei. We're commemorating it in terms of remembering the miracle that Hashem did by having him killed. Now, astonishingly, while it may sound from the Megillah that it was a long time until Haman was killed, indeed, based on the calculation of what's written, only 4 days passed by from the decree until his death. After he sent out the decree to destroy the Jewish people, he didn't live for another 4 days more. On the fourth day, after that, he was already dead. So the panic and threat under the Jewish people, the real panic, was only about 3 days in length. 72 hours of panic, and it was over. So it wasn't like we lived a whole year in this panicky state. For all those who want to reminisce what we discussed in previous years, the connection of the Tafshin Zayin and the Megillah with the Holocaust and the Nuremberg trials. So we have an audio online on that. You can reminisce that over there. I want to go straight to the halachas so we can cover at least a summary of what we need to know. So let's begin. Let's begin with Tainus Esther. That's our first thing, which is occurring this year, this Wednesday morning, starting from Aleis HaShacha. We have Tainus Esther, which is commemorating, as the Rabbi explains, the fast that Esther fasted on the day of Yud Gimel Adar, when the rest of the Jewish people ate and drank, so they have koyach to fight the enemies of Amalek and the people attacking them. So that's why it's called Tainus Esther, because this is the fast that Esther fasted. No one else fasted. Everyone else had to fight the enemy, and you need to eat and drink, so you have strength. However, Esther, no one was attacking her, so she fasted. That's why it's called Tainus Esther, in commemoration of this. So it's not in commemoration of the 3-day fast. That's explicitly recorded. It is not in commemoration of the 3-day fast that took place. It's rather in commemoration of the fast that took place on the day of battle. Now the Rebbe says, who fasted on that day? Not the Jewish people, because they were in battle. Esther, she was the only one who was safe. She had a safe haven, so that's why it's called Tainus Esther. Okay, Tainus Esther recording Kavayasha. This is a very auspicious day. All the gates of heaven are open. This is an introduction to the even greater opening of the gates of heaven on Purim, in which it's recorded that the same way in the Shulchan Aruch, it's recorded based on the Arizal, whoever opens their hands, you should give him Kol Pesach Yad Naisnei. So too spiritually, God opens his hand, and whoever asks, he gives.
More than Purim, or no?
No, I said it's an introduction to the, but it already begins on Tainus Esther. It's a very auspicious time for Hashem to accept prayers, and some have the custom of saying Kapitel Chaf Beis, Ayeles HaShachar. It's the Kapitel of Esther, 22, Psalm 22. Okay, so Tainus Esther is a fast that's guarded by men and women. Anyone who is sick is exempt from this fast. Sick means either bedridden, fever, weak in your entire body, obviously not due to the fast, but due to an illness, or someone who's in extreme pain. The one leniency we have with Tainus Esther over all the other fasts is that pain is a good enough criteria to be exempted from the fast. Normally, pain is not enough. A person has to be actually sick. But if a person in this fast, a person who is in pain, then he's allowed to break his fast on Tainus Esther. Technically, he has to make it up on another date if he's breaking it due to pain, but that is not the custom. Women, as is usually the case, all women who are within 30 days of birth, all women who are nursing, all women who are pregnant, do not have to fast at all. This applies even within 3 months of the pregnancy. Women do not have to fast.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
I have really low blood pressure, and whenever I fast, I faint.
It's not a good thing to faint.
And I
You
have to go
shouldn't
to the
fast.
bathroom.
It's not a good thing to faint, obviously. Low blood pressure is very dangerous, so
when
you
I
should
get up,
speak
I
to your
always sleep.
doctor, and if he says fasting is not a good idea, which what it sounds like to me, then obviously you should not be fasting on any of the rabbinical fasts.
Right. Yom Kippur, I for sure do.
Yom Kippur, unless it's a sakana. If it's having low blood pressure, it could be a sakana, so you have to see.
No, I mean, I do pass
That's
out,
why we
though.
have doctors. I am not a
get
doctor.
dizzy. I start going like
I
this.
can only rule based on the medical information that you present from your doctor.
So I
I
have
cannot
to
rule.
ask my doctor
100%.
first, okay.
That's who you have to speak to, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Same problem.
Yeah.
I have fast. Or what I do is I eat like just nuts every like 30 minutes.
Just
a
enough
small
to
amount.
keep you.
Because I get migraines.
Wow.
Severe migraines. So it's not worth the pain.
On this point, I'll remind everybody that while maybe we, as Rabbanim, we like wearing the hats of many different types of people, we're not mechanics, we're not doctors, we're not lawyers, and we're not marriage counselors. We are poskim who paskin halacha. That is our expertise, and you should go to all those other fields to
So you make
get
your
advice.
decision based on what the doctor says.
A Rav will make the decision based on the medical
Rav.
information received from the doctor. But I'm already telling you now, in a rabbinical fast, Yom Kippur is more complex. A rabbinical fast, especially Tainas Esther, if he says that no, it is not healthy for you with low blood pressure to be fasting, that is, that can be considered a serious illness, and obviously you would not fast due to that. Or if he says, well, you can start fasting, and if you start feeling a little bit faint,
Right.
then right away break it. That also, but generally, if you have this condition,
Right.
then you should not be fasting. Traveling is not an exemption for fasting, so even though we know fasting while you're traveling makes things more difficult, that would not be an exemption. A slight headache due to the fast would not be an exemption. A person who has a very big headache, that could be an exemption, as I said before, due to the pain criteria that we get on Purim, and a person may be exempt from the fast due to that. If we, Kala, you're going to be a Kala still on Tainas Esther? Yes? You're still within 7 days? When was the wedding? Wednesday day or Wednesday night?
Wednesday, we count as night. I think it counts as night.
When was the chuppah?
6 p.m., 6:30.
The chuppah was over 6:30?
Does anyone check the time? Is that
Right, I'm sure.
We're running late, so it was around 6:30. So
Right, so Bein Hashma, okay, we can count it as night already. If it's as night already, so it's starting Thursday. So yes, you are exempt from the fast. No fast for Sheva Brachas. You don't fast on Sheva Brachas. Assuming it says,
Fine. Okay, thank you.
okay. So long as you're doing the Sheva Brachas, you don't fast. That's the idea. Okay, we'll just review some reminders about Tainas Esther. I want to move on to other subjects. General reminders of fast, as we've said many, many times, it's forbidden to eat starting from Aleisa Shachar. It doesn't go by when it looks like day outside. It goes by when the clock says, based on the Luach Zmanim, that Aleisa Shachar has arrived. And as we said, that here in Eretz Yisrael we are machmir, that it be 2 fluctuating hours, 16.1 degrees below the horizon. I'm sorry, 20 degrees below the horizon of the sun. Practically, the Chabad House will publicize the exact time of Aleisa Shachar. As we've mentioned many times, Chabad.org's time of Aleisa Shachar is inaccurate for Eretz Yisrael and should not be relied upon. A person may eat until that time so long as they are up, they never went to sleep yet, or they went to sleep on condition to eat. If they did not go to sleep on condition to wake up and eat, then they may not eat, even though they woke up before the fast, but they may drink, okay? So the best thing is for just us to say now, whenever we go to sleep the night before the fast, we always precondition that we want to eat if we wake up on time, and that will cover us if we forget to precondition at the time. So that will cover us. We can do it once a year, and that will take care of that issue. It is forbidden to eat and drink before Megillah reading. So the fast is pretty much continuing until after the Megillah is read at night. Again, for those who fast. Those who are not allowed to fast, then if they need to eat, they need to eat. But for those who fast, then it continues till afterwards. In a time of great need, a person is feeling a little faint, a little dizzy. Obviously, you can have a coffee, you can have a tea, you can even have mezainis if it's necessary. But ideally, the chatchila, we do not eat and drink anything until after Megillah reading. This applies by day as well. Also by daytime, It's forbidden to have a meal before Megillah reading, and as I said many times, there's no difference in men and women with the same level chiyuv. So that means if someone wants to read for their wife Megillah reading, or the wife wants to go to a late Megillah reading at 10, 11, 12, or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, they have a big problem with the meal.
What?
They can't eat a meal till then.
What?
They can't eat a meal till then.
Wow. But it's not a fast day.
So what can they eat? So lechatchila, Midas Chassidus is to fast until Megillah reading, and that's how we are minhagei. Lechatchila is to fast until Megillah reading, but that's a Midas Chassidus. That's not a letter of the law. A letter of the law is that you can drink something, you can have a fruit or something small. Zaynis you shouldn't have of more than a kibetza. A meal, obviously, you shouldn't wash for bread, etc. But small something here and there, you can nibble, you can snack here and there. But even snack, you have to make sure it doesn't go above the shear of 55 grams of mezainis before Megillah reading.
And there's a reason for that?
Absolutely. Before a mitzvah is fulfilled, you're not allowed to do your own benefits. You can't do things for yourself. We're afraid that if a person starts eating a meal, one thing leads to the next, and we know how it works. We have this all the time. We want to do something, we put it to the side for a minute to do something else, and one thing leads to the next, to the next, to the next, and before we know it, we can't do it anymore. So this illness didn't start today of pushing things off. Chachamim knew about it already thousands of years ago. And they told people, don't push off what you can do now for later, because it usually won't happen later. We say slichus, we say tachanun on Erev Purim, on Tainus Esther. Again, just like always, if you're not with a minyan, you can't say Yedagimel Midas Harachamim. You can only say that together with an actual minyan. We say Avinu Malkeinu, that you can say without a minyan, that's not a problem. You can say Avinu Malkeinu. Even if a chassan is present in shul, we say Avinu Malkeinu. Regarding Anenu, for those who are fasting, we only say it as Ashkenazim in Mincha Shmena Esrei. Sephardim say it in all the Shmena Esreis. We only say it in the Mincha Shmena Esrei, as in any fast day. And because it's Erev Purim, we do not say Tachanun or Avinu Malkeinu after Mincha. So it's a short Mincha. And we have the mitzvah of Machatzis HaShekel that is fulfilled before Mincha. The custom is before Mincha that we give 3 coins, half shekel each. Here in Israel we get out cheap. It's only a half a shekel each coin. In America it's a half a dollar each coin. In every country goes like according to their currency. So if you're in Europe, you have to do the half of the euro, or I don't know, Brexit may happen, so you may have to do the half of the pound. The pound may be much cheaper by the time Brexit happens, so unfortunately. So you have that choice. You can do the half a pound or half of the euro. Each country does on their own. Nonetheless, you may hear, and especially among Sephardim, it became super popular, even though originally this is an Ashkenazi custom. The custom is brought down by the Ramah. It's not like a mitzvah in the Torah, thou shalt give a half a shekel each year. That is a mitzvah in biblical times when we needed a fund for the karbanas. Today, this is a custom. It's a minhag, it's not a chiyuv, but we do it and we like doing it, and it's brought in Ashkenazi poskim, but the Sephardim as well do it, and they do it even better than us. A lot of them are machmir to give the actual value of a half silver shekel in the times of the Mikdash, which is based on the price of silver. You can do it yourself if you want to know the exact rate. It's 9.6 grams of silver are inside the 9.6. A half shekel is worth 9.6 grams of silver. Now, what is the value of 9.6 grams of silver? Look it up on Yud Gimel Adar. What is the market value of silver per gram? And times that by 9.6. And this fluctuates. That is a hitter, yes. So what I'm trying to explain to you is that this is a hitter. So when you hear people saying, oh, no, Machatzis HaShekel is 20 shekel, that's some are mahadr to do it that way, and there's nothing wrong with that, that's fine. But the minadin is that you give half a shekel coin, 3 of those for the 3 times it says truma, and we give it on behalf of all family members that are still living by us. So if we have children already married, their husbands give on behalf of the wives, or the son gives on behalf of himself, but any of the household we give on behalf of them, including a newborn baby, as the chaper. The Ramah says that from here we learn that you should also give on behalf of a fetus. So everyone gives on behalf of the father of the home, gives on behalf of all the family members, including the woman etc. And as we know, the Gemara says that the giving, the preceding of the half shekel donation of the Jewish people, that preempted the decree of Haman and caused it to foil. There's no need to be machmer to give a $50 coin. Some people think, oh, it has to be a $50 because it contains silver. So first of all, some wake-up news, the $50 stopped containing silver starting in like the 50s. So if you've got a nice, newly minted $50, it doesn't have any silver in it. That's A. B, even if you have an old one that contains silver, there's no obligation to give it specifically with one that contains silver. Only in America that is the coin that they use, that the dollar bill is the dollar, that's the half currency would be the $50. Do you need to use a $50 whether it contains silver or not?
You have to give that per family member, that amount per family member?
The minhagei is we give 3. So since $50 are very rare for whatever reason, so what's usually is done is that the gabbai of the shul has 3 $50, and everyone comes and they give money. So let's say I need to give $30 worth for all my family members. Then I'm going to pick up those 3. I'm going to give the gabbai $30 and pick it up, put it down, pick it up, put it down. The Mishnah Berurah discusses that this is a very strange custom. He says, what is the meaning of picking it up, putting it? What are you doing exactly? What are you accomplishing by doing that? But nonetheless, this is what do. I don't know why. The market is not flooded with $50. $50 are very rare for whatever reason. Somebody works in the coinage industry, maybe we should get them to start putting it back in the, like the half shekel. Right? And then everyone can do the mitzvah properly without the ceremony of back and forth. Okay. The money should preferably be given to a shul, like the Beis Hamikdash, as back in the day. It can also be given to paupers. That is also fine. That is not a problem. Okay, let's move on to the date of Purim. We're now moving on to Purim, the Purim celebration, then we'll go to Megillah reading and everything else. Okay, so as we know that even though all Jewish holidays, Baruch Hashem, have one set date in the whole world, and somehow all the Jewish controversies that exist in Jewish law, it happened to skip the holidays, meaning we don't have a controversy as to the date of the holidays. Baruch Hashem. There used to be, we spoke about this once, for a very short period in Eretz Yisrael, there was a controversy as to when Pesach is. Some said Pesach was the day later, some said Pesach was the day earlier, but that controversy ended quite quickly. Baruch Hashem, the Jewish calendar is unanimous in all circles. Even the Reform movement doesn't say we're going to pick a different date for Purim or Pesach. They all have it on the same day. The only breakaway minyan that changed the dates is Christianity. They changed the dates, Baruch Hashem, for a good reason, so it doesn't resemble Judaism, but all the dates are the same. So we have one unique holiday in which we strangely find different dates, and that's Purim. The sages established one date for the unwalled cities and one date for the walled cities. Practically the only city we know of that should follow the 15th today that is definitively walled city in the times that it says by Yeshua ben Nun's time, is Jerusalem. So Jerusalem is the only city. Shushan as well, if we would know the original place of Shushan today, and someone lived there, then they would indeed also keep the 15th. From what we know based on the travels of Benjamin of Tudela, we don't have any more connection with Shushan. It's not a known city. It was destroyed in his time. No inhabitants. So even someone who's in Hamadan, next to Mordechai's burial place and is celebrating Purim with Mordechai, would have to keep on the 14th.
Why do some people say spot?
Because people say tzvahs about everything. That's the reason. We are very proud of our city, and sometimes, it's like family members. We boast about our parents. We boast about, and sometimes we exaggerate a little bit. I like the claim we don't have to be maspid our city. Hesped, you exaggerate. You say, we don't have to be maspid our city. Our city has enough true and a lot of, documented greatness that we don't have to put steroids into it. But what is true, as I discussed this in previous years, and we have an article online on shulchanaruch.com on this, is that according to the documentation of many diaries of travels of many, many Jewish travelers, Esther, not Mordechai, but Esther is buried near Tzfas in the town of Baram. Yeah, we discussed this.
Oh,
It's not far from here. You can go on Google Maps. It's about a 20-minute drive. The old custom of Tzfas, going back 300-400 years, more, 500-600 years, because that's when this was written in his travels. In one of the travelers, Jewish travelers, he writes in the 15th century or 16th century that the custom in Tzfas is that on Shushan Purim, not the 14th, but the 15th, that they would go to Baram and celebrate with a huge celebration of music and feasts, a real, like a Lag BaOmer event by Esther's burial place in Baram. So that's very close. It's near the Lebanon border. It's a 25-minute drive from here by car. And
you know where she's buried?
whoever wants, no, there's
There's
a,
the kever.
there's official kever, but they also took Mordechai with them.
Wow.
The people who noted the kever wrote also Mordechai. So you go to Hamadan in Iran, it says Mordechai and Esther. You go to Baram, it says Mordechai and Esther. How can a person be buried in two places at the same time? So we have a machlekes to the burial. What? A what? Anyway, so, but what I explained based on the research was that in truth, Mordechai is buried there in Hamadan, and Esther indeed is buried here in Baram. And that's the confusion, because Esther was later buried. She asked her for her son, Daryavesh, to bury Kosh, to bury her in Eretz Yisrael. That's the tradition we have. Again, this is all based on traditions that we have. But one thing is for certain, that the legitimization of this burial place here in Baram is much heavier and greater than most documentation of most burial places we have. I mean, to find it documented in literally tens of journeys and diaries from the 1100s until the 1600s is not nothing. That's the tradition. That's where she was buried. While Haman was buried, Mordechai was buried in Hamadan. But in Benjamin of Tudela's travels, he actually does write Mordechai and Esther buried there. So, as I said, it is under a little bit of debate, but definitely that was the Tzfas custom originally, and it's a good thing to continue, whoever is able to. On Shushan Purim this year, it's Friday, to go and have a celebration meal. Maybe they do. Maybe people still do it today. I don't know. They don't publicize it. It's not advertised, but it's a good thing. We can restart. Okay, getting back to what we're discussing. So the only known city is the city of Jerusalem. However, we have a number of cities that are what's called sfeika cities, doubt cities, questionable cities, and the reason why they're questionable is for a number of reasons. Number one, perhaps they had a wall in the times of Yeshua ben Nun, and if so, they're just like Jerusalem. However, since it's perhaps, they're not like Jerusalem. Jerusalem is for certain. So therefore, due to doubt, we don't do without. We don't say, okay, no Purim, because we don't know. We say, Safek D'Rabbanan, right? A person can use Halacha to get out of Purim. Safek D'Rabbanan L'Kula. So since we don't know when Purim is, you don't have to keep Purim in the doubtful cities. No, we're Machmir, as was brought in Shulchan Aruch, as brought in the Gemara and Megillah, to keep 2 days of Purim. And what that means, 2 days of Purim in the Safek cities, let me just review again which cities would enter into that. Not the list yet, but just the criteria. So a city that's in doubt, maybe it had a wall. I'll just give you one example. Prague is recorded in Paiskim of the 16th century that it is doubtful whether it had a wall in times of Yeshua ben Nun, which is very interesting historically. A lot of historians, there's a big historical debate about this, but you would be saying that over 3,500 years ago, there were people living in Europe, in Prague, Czechoslovakia. Okay, I mean, how did the wall get there if people weren't living there? Obviously, we're saying people live there, which is, as I said, it's under debate from a historical perspective. But this is what we have, that there's a shaila, and therefore in Prague they would keep 2 days of Purim. Purim was kept for 2 days. Now it could be, the story with the matzah, the famous story with the Neidah Yehuda. He changed the date of Pesach because of the blood libel. So maybe also that could have also creeped in, that created this confusion of Purim in the city. But nonetheless, in Prague, people who live in Prague today, they keep 2 days due to doubt because maybe it had a wall at that time. And so that's one example. Another example, we for sure didn't have a wall, and this is a new settlement, just created now. But we see, we're within vision, meaning the truth is it's the opposite, that the walled city can't see us. So if from, let's say, Tiberias, which is a Suffolk city, they can see tzfas, so tzfas would enter into the doubt. Or if from the old city of Jerusalem, I can see Mivaseret Zion, or I can see Malei Adumim, so they enter into the doubt now as well. Perhaps now they're considered part of the 15th. So one of them is if you're a walled city, and the second is if you are within sight of the walled city. Not that I see the walled city, but that the walled city can see us. There's a whole book, 3 volumes, that was written by Yechiel Michal Tukuchinsky in the 1940s, just on this subject. It's a 3-volume book on one Mishnah to understand which cities are considered 14thers, which cities are considered 15thers, because there's a lot of debates on the criteria of what it means. Like, for example, just this point, is it that I see the city that's walled, or is it that the city that's walled sees me? Who sees who? What do you have to see it from when you're standing on the street or standing from on the roofs? He has a whole book, 3 volumes on this subject. It's called Ir HaKodesh VaMikdash. In any event, so bottom line is that we have a number of cities that enter into these doubts, whether they were walled or whether they're within a certain distance, or whether another one is if you're within a certain distance of a mill to the city, then you're also included in the 15th, even though you yourself are not a walled city. So because of all this, we have a big balagan as to the dates. And a number of cities are under doubt, and all doubtful cities, which Sfas is one of them, Tiberia is one of them, Shechem is one of them, Hebron is one of them, Lud, the old city, is one of them, Jaffa is one of them, the old city of Tel Aviv. Okay, there's a number of other ones. If you have any other cities you want to know about, I can let you know. Ein Zeitim, which is right here, is another one. Ramleh, Jericho, Beria, which is all Tzfas, as you see. Beit Sha'an, Damascus, and Aleppo.
What's Aleppo?
Aleppo is the city that is in ruins in northern Syria.
Oh.
Baghdad, another city of doubt. Gaza, Akko, all these cities are cities of doubt. Okay? Either due to maybe they had a wall in the times of Yeshua ben Nun, or we know they don't have walls, but they can be seen from a city that is walled or by a city that's a doubt. So then they enter into the doubt as well. So what do these cities do? So, well, these cities, including us, what we do is that in the 2 days of Yudalit and Tezvav, we read Megillah night and day for a total of 4 times. However, a blessing due to doubt, due without, we can only make on the night and day of Purim, Yudalit, Wednesday night, Thursday, and not on Thursday night, Friday. This goes for all the doubtful cities. No blessing is said, because you can ask, then why say a bracha on Yudalit? It's a doubt also. It's the same level doubt. The answer is it's not. As first of all, number one, when in doubt, do like the majority. The majority of people in the world do Yudalit. Number 2, b'di'evet, if a Tesvavnik read Megillah on a Yudalit, he's Yaitse after the fact. So therefore, if bracha is allowed to be made, it's not a problem, and that's what we do. Mishlach Manis, we do both Purim day in the 14th and Purim day of the 15th, Shushan Purim. Tanas Levyanim, again, we do it both on Purim day of the 14th, Purim day of the 15th. So while the 14th we'll give out to everyone, we should save one person that we're going to give Mishlach Manas to, 2 presents on the 15th, which is Friday. Matanis Levyanim, again, to 2 paupers, we should give the 14th and again the 15th. You can give to the same person twice, that's not a problem. Okay, on both days. But you have to give twice. You can't say, okay, this is $10, 5 for today, 5 for tomorrow. No, tomorrow go over to him and give him another 5.
Is this only Chabad thing? About keeping
2 days?
Yeah.
Where? It's
Tzfas.
Gemara. Oh, in Tzfas, the city. No, it's based in the Arizal. It's based in the Arizal. Now, there are many Litvish who don't keep it. Tzfas is under. The idea of considering Tzfas as a suffix city is under debate. We don't know from when it started. We know definitely the Arizal kept it as a suffix, but not all of the Arizal's customs were customs of the masses. Right. And therefore, amongst the Litvish community, I believe that they don't keep a second day here in Tzfas, but amongst many of the Sfardim and especially Chassidim, we definitely are Cheshish Once again, we see Tiveria. Tiveria can't see us. They are a definite suffix city. They are in the Talmud as a suffix. So there's no doubt about their doubt. And there's no doubt that we're within viewpoint of them. So the Arizal's approach makes a lot of sense.
You say a bracha on the second day of Megillah?
No. I said second day we don't say any blessings on Megillah. Mishloach manis, you say a bracha if you're eating food, like you always say a bracha when you eat food, right? But we don't say a bracha on Mishloach manis. The Sudas Purim as well, we will have twice, once on Yudalit and once on Tezvav. But the truth is that's not really a novelty for us, for a doubtful city, because every city, every Jew should have an extra meal on Shushan Purim, regardless of whether he celebrated the day before or not. There's a mitzvah to increase in a Suda also on Shushan Purim.
So that's on Erev Shabbos. So you
Correct. This is Erev Shabbos. Very good. So this meal should take place before Chatzos. So before Chatzos, we should have another Purim Suda. But since by us it's a suffix, it has to be Adela Yada and everything once again, all over again, a repeat. And so, anyways.
Wait, can I ask a question? How about after the fast Wednesday night? So that's a Suda too?
Yeah, I'll get to that.
Okay.
Right now, I'm just we'll get to the chronological over everything. All the mitzvahs. Right now, I just want to explain the doubts of what's done.
Okay.
So yes, we should begin the meal before Chatzos because it's Erev Shabbos. Likewise for Jerusalemites, Jerusalem residents, that is their Purim day. They should be keeping it on test. They should be starting their meal before Chatzos. If they did not, they should start it before the 10th. Also us. This is for us as well. We should start before the 10th hour of the day, which is 3 hours before sunset. I was just informed that the daylight saving time is going to affect Thursday night
Not
at
this
2 o'clock.
week? No.
Oh, it's not this week?
No, it's the week after.
So I was misinformed then.
Yeah.
That is going to affect this week. Thank you. And phew, wow. Now I've got to go back to the previous recording and tell everyone. Okay, so forget about that. Let's drop that. Bottom line is that the second stop is 3 hours before Shkia, and the next stop is of course Shkia. If you didn't, you can still wash before Shkia, especially in Jerusalem. That's their day of Purim. They have a mitzvah of Sudas Purim, definitively, and then you would have to do what's called Paris Mapul Makadosh, which is a very it's a complex halachic trick that allows you to continue your meal into Shabbos that you started before Shabbos and have your pre-Shabbos Sudas Purim meal count also as the Shabbos meal. But that enters into a bunch of machlekusim and doubts. So the best thing is, as it's written, bench before sunset, go to shul, daven ma'ariv, and then you can wash again for your night meal of Shabbos. That's the best thing to do.
You don't even have an appetite for Shabbos.
That's why we said initially do it before midday.
Yeah.
Correct. That's why the poskim write before midday, before Chatzos.
Right.
A lot of people, most people this year in Jerusalem, as every year when it ends up being on Friday, they go to shul, they come back home from shul from Megillah reading, they give them a shalach manas, 9, 10 o'clock in the morning, they're already having their Sudas Purim. By 11, 12 o'clock, they're already drunk. By 1 o'clock, they're already sleeping. By 4, 5 o'clock, they're already in shul like nothing happened.
There you go. That's how you do it. Awesome.
But by Chassidim, as you can imagine, things work a little bit more delayed. So, we finish Megillah reading at 10, 11, 12. We do Mivtzai, Mishloach Manas. We begin washing at 5 minutes to Shkia. And we do the same thing, just that we wake up and everything's like normal on Shabbos afternoon. Okay. Alanisim. We do not say Alanisim here in Tzfas, and I emphasize Tzfas, even though we're a doubtful city. We do not say Alanisim on the second day. We only say it on the first day, but ideally the ruling is, for other cities of doubt, to say it on both days. Okay, we say Alanisim on the first day and on the second day if you are in a doubtful city. Here in Tzfas we have a Messiah that we don't say it on the second day. That was the custom of the Arizal, the acclaimed custom of the Arizal. This is under debate. Some say it's brought down that the Arizal did not say Alanisim in the Shemana Esrei. The Munkatcher says, what kind of proof is that? Was someone listening into the Arizal Shemana Esrei? He davened for the Amud, so when he davened for the public, he didn't say Alanisim, but maybe in his private Shemana Esrei he did. So he argues that even in Tzfas you should say Alanisim. Bottom line is, the custom is that we don't say the second day, but we do say the first day. Okay, let's now move on to the rest of the order. So we are in shul, we heard Megillah reading. Ideally, Megillah reading is to be heard. Or, you know what, let me just backtrack a little bit. Before Megillah reading, let's talk about Purim dress code and Ma'ariv. Okay, so first let's do Purim dress code. The dress code on Purim is brought down in the Ramah. One should wear Shabbos clothing on Purim. So for all those who don't have costumes, they are to dress with their most honorable clothing, Shabbos clothing, starting from the previous night. So we come to shul already from Megillah reading in our Shabbos clothing. Those who want to wear a costume, as is customary, as written in the Ramah, right? The custom wearing costumes is written in the Ramah. That this was a very old minhag. It's recorded. The first costume recorded, Purim costume recorded, is in the sefer called Evan Boichin, which was written by Klonumis ben Klonumis in the 1200s. So he was our first source. We then have it written in Rabbi Yehuda of Minsk, the Marie of Minsk. It was one of the Ashkenazi Rishonim, and minhagei worms, and then brought in later Poskim and Rishonim and Achreinim. And this is where we also have the discussion in these Poskim about cross-dressing. It was customary for reasons that I don't understand really, but they got a really good kick out of cross-dressing for Purim and cross-dressing for weddings. It was a shtick that the men looked like the women looked like the men, to cross-dress. And the Poskim discuss, is this allowed or not? And bottom line is that it should not be done. One should not cross-dress any time of the year or even on Purim. According to Halacha, in your day it's brought down that there is a biblical prohibition to wear clothing of the opposite gender. However, the poskim say that if you're doing it just for jest and fun, then you're not transgressing, as the transgression is when you're doing it to seriously appear like the other gender. Since you're doing it just for fun, it's mutter, and that's what they bring down here, that the custom is to be lenient for simcha purposes, like by a wedding or on Purim, to cross-dress. Practically, the Achreinim negate this and say it should not be done. Unless there is an obvious it is obviously noticeable that the person is a male or female, despite whatever they're trying to wear. But otherwise, a person should definitely not cross-dress. Those who do, you don't have to scream at them. But okay, with that said, so the minhag of wearing costumes is a very old Jewish custom written about in the Rishonim. There's just some limitations of what we can and cannot wear. The Rabbi spoke about that children should have crowns. It's an old Jewish minhag for them to have crowns representing Queen Esther or Mordechai, etc., to wear crowns. I also want to mention an alert that a lot of the costumes that are sold in stores have shotness problems, especially if they come from Europe and Eastern Europe. So look out for that, for the shotness issue that may be involved in a costume. Okay. Moving along. Purim night. Okay, we go to shul. Those who are fasting are still fasting. We have a regular Ma'ariv Shemana Esrei, a regular Ma'ariv davening, just with adding Al Hanisim. If you forgot to say Al Hanisim anytime on Purim, you do not repeat a bracha for, you do not go back to Shemana Esrei. You can repeat it, you can say it to make it up in the Yehilaratza, in the second Yehilaratza that we say it after Lekai Nitzar. In the end of Shemana Esrei, there's a paragraph that we say before we take 3 steps back. So before the taking 3 steps back, you can make it up if you missed it. Over there, same thing in benching. If you didn't say it, you just continue. If you already said Hashem's name, you just continue. You can't go back anymore. Repeat a blessing. And you can make it up in the Harachman. When you reach the Harachman, you can make it up over there. In the event that as many people's Purim Suda is ending the night after Purim, meaning you started before Shkia, you're ending it Shushan Purim, 8, 9 o'clock at night, or even 7 o'clock at night. It's already after Tzeisik Echav, it's after nighttime. Do you still say Al Nisim? The answer is only if you didn't yet daven Ma'ariv can you say Al Hanisim. If you're already daven Ma'ariv, you can no longer say Al Hanisim. So make sure to bench beforehand, before anyone davens. They should bench already Berchas Hamazon. If a person is drunk, women do not have a mitzvah to get drunk. There's no mitzvah of Adul Yada by women. Yes, there is no mitzvah. And even by men, as the Ramah points out, the mitzvah is only for those who know how to handle their alcohol. If someone doesn't know how to handle their alcohol. We all know we have 2 pipes. We have the trachea and the esophagus. What happens when it goes down the trachea? choke. It goes down the esophagus, it has an effect on us, but if it goes down the trachea, you can choke. So too with alcohol. It can go down the tube of the left side of the heart, the animal soul, go into the tube of the right side of the heart, the godly soul. If it goes down the left side of the heart, a person can spiritually choke. It is not a good thing. Even on Purim, there's no heter on Purim to get drunk and be mishtolel and do things against halacha and stumble on different things. So if a person knows that as it says, nichnas yain yatzasayid, wine enters, the secrets come out. He knows his secrets are better kept secret, then he should not be drinking.
Also, some people get sick when they drink, like my
That's
husband. So he
also
doesn't
true,
drink.
but the Gra, those who follow the Gra held that you should drink on Purim Adula Yada, even if you're be close to death due to the drinking.
Really?
He
Even
took
if
a
it makes
very
you sick?
alcoholist approach. Yeah, he took a
I've
very,
never
very
heard
extreme
that.
approach.
That's terrible.
So those who follow the Gra, even if they'll get sick, they get drunk completely. But again, even he agrees only if something spiritual good would come out of it. It'll be a good spiritual drunk. It won't be a drunk where the person gets all filled with wrath and anger and mishtalel, etc. Or even simple things. He's going to oversleep. He's not going to daven Ma'ariv, not going to say Kriya Shema. There's no place for that. The Ramah gave us an option that instead of drinking, you drink a little more than usual and take a nap. Have a little bit of schnapps, take a nap. The Rebbe once said, though, that was because when they first enacted the mitzvahs, he says, Mordechai was a chassid. He said, I want everyone to drink like they have to, like they're supposed to. But there were some, this is as a joke, no one should be offended, God forbid, right? The Rebbe said, as a Purim joke, a Purim spiel, that the Misnagdim of that time opposed Mordechai, in the Anshe Knesset Gedol, opposed Mordechai's decree. So Mordechai was enforced to agree to the second option, an alternative, drink a little more schnapps than usual and have a nap. But ideally, a chassid fulfills the actual mitzvah, he's mahaded to get drunk. But again, all this is if a person can handle his liquor. And of course, if a person's going to be driving, there's no heter whatsoever for him to get drunk. Either he should give someone else the keys, or he should sleep there for the night. But to drink and drive is an isser deraisa, and it is a mitzvah to call the police. If you see someone on Purim who's drinking alcohol and he's driving, you call the police. We cannot put other people's lives in danger because, oh, I feel bad calling the police. There's no time now to feel bad. Now is time of action. This person cannot be on the road. And a person who suddenly uses, oh, it's Lashon Hara and the Messiah argument, in these situations, they are spilling blood. Yeah. In these cases, all the poskim agree, you have an obligation as a good Samaritan to stop the person. As I heard from one Rav, he says, well, I called the police aren't coming, what should I do? He says, take out your gun and shoot his tires.
Oh, God.
You see, it was that serious. He said, take out your gun and shoot his tires.
Better that than a knife.
Right? So that is something that all drivers will be very careful in. If you're driving, you cannot be drinking. Okay. Getting back, there is no mitzvah to drink. The mitzvah to drink is specifically by Purim day, by the Purim Suda, although many are accustomed also Purim night to drink. In that sefer I mentioned earlier of Rav Kolonimus, he there mentions that there would be a huge Purim party with all the great rabbis on Purim night, and everyone would get drunk and come with their costumes. So this idea of the Purim parties on the night of Purim is a very old custom from the 1200s already written about. And the Ramah does write that one should have a meal, a slight meal, on Purim night, even though you're not yotze with that meal, you're only yotze with the day meal.
Bread.
Yeah, you don't have to wash, but it's a good thing to wash. A slight meal should be had per night. Regarding Megillah reading, we have 2 minutes left. Let's just sum up regarding Megillah reading. Regarding Megillah reading, it is women are absolutely obligated, just like men. If you are having someone read for you and you did not yet, and they already were yotze, the man was already yotze, then you should say the bracha, and the bracha is l'shmaya Megillah or l'shmaya mikra Megillah. You don't say the regular bracha of al mikra Megillah. You say l'shmaya Megillah. That's the bracha that women say. And if it's a group of women, then the best thing is that every woman to say for herself the bracha, or one person should be appointed to say on behalf of everyone, and everyone listens and is yotze that bracha. Ideally, a man should not say the bracha for a woman if he was already yotze his mitzvah. The woman has to say the bracha. Regarding if a woman may read on behalf of women, look in tomorrow's day halacha, which will be discussed in length. Bottom line is that lechatchila it is not to be done. Lechatchila, a woman should not read on behalf of women. However, if a woman has a kosher Megillah available, does not have a male reader who can read it properly with the correct punctuation, and she can read it with the correct punctuation, then she has to read it for herself, and even if it's for a group of women, she has to read it for a group of women if no man is available. If men are available or will become available, then she is to wait and have the man read it, because some poskim hold, and especially based on Kabbalah, that a man is to read it specifically for that a woman is invalid to read the Megillah for a woman, is invalid to read the Megillah. As I said, bottom line, halacha l'maisa, the way we rule is that lechatchila always hear from a man. Push comes to shove, a male is not available to read. Since women are chayiv in the reading, they can read it for themselves with a bracha, they can read it for other women with a bracha, and in a time of need that no one else is available, they can even read it for men. For example, if you are doing mivtzaim in, I don't know, let's say Kazakhstan, and you only have a certain amount of people, you have 3 rebbitzins and 3 rabbis, and there's 20 communities that need to hear Megillah reading, and there's no way the 3 male rabbis are going to finish all of them, and these Russian Jews don't know how to read a word of Hebrew, there's no choice. So in that situation, he'll send the rebbitzins with kosher Megillahs, and the rebbitzins will read the Megillah for the men without a blessing, because the machlekes if they're yaitze, but better that than nothing. Some poskim will argue what I'm saying, right? So some poskim say it's kol isha, but that is not the accepted opinion. It is not considered kol isha, especially if most women do not know how to read it with the trup. They never studied it. They never had a teacher teach it to them, so they'll just read it with the regular way. Then it certainly won't be kol isha. But even if it's with the trup, it's not so simple. It's considered kol isha. It's not exactly a singing voice. You can technically say any voice is singing. Anytime someone talks, when we hear English people speaking, so we're not allowed to hear English women speak. It sounds like a song to me, right? When they speak, right? Or when they hear Americans speak, they say it sounds like rap or it sounds like a song. So just because you say things with a type of tune or accent, that doesn't exactly make it into a forbidden type of song. Moving along, so once again, as we mentioned, no eating beforehand. You can maybe snack a little bit, but the earlier the better. It is preferable for a woman to go to the main Megillah reading both by night and day, not to go to a woman's reading, not to go to a private Megillah reading. It's meant to be done Rov Amadus Melech lichatchila. So initially, you want to do the best of the best. Go to the main Megillah reading of your shul. Join that reading if you're able to. If you're not able to, for whatever reason, babysitting, etc., then obviously you would go to a later reading. Even if it's only for women, that is fine, as we already mentioned. Regarding babies should not be brought to shul on Purim to hear Megillah reading. They are not chayiv, and they are very machmer babies. They don't only stomp out Haman when Haman's name is read. They don't differentiate. They stomp out every word of the Megillah, and that causes a problem for the listeners. So obviously, babies who cannot control their Haman attacks, they are not to be brought to shul. They can be yetze at home from a half a reading, from a few words, let them bang Haman at home. And that's why they should then go to a woman's reading in that situation if they have a babysitter. Let's just finish up here with Mishlach Manas Matanas Levyainim. So Mishlach Manas, as we know, the Magen Avram says that even married women have to give on their own. So the husband is to make sure that the wives have their own money that they can use for Mishlach Manas to one person. Matanas Levyainim to 2 paupers, and regarding the Purim Seudah, it's preferable for it to contain actual meat, red meat, like cow, sheep, lamb, goat, deer, whatever you like, not fowl. Lichatchila, if it works according to your diet. And of course, wine, that is another staple of the Purim Seudah. It is the best thing to drink as opposed to all the other alcohols, as that is what Achashverosh drank during the meals, and that was the Besumid Bepuria, specifically with wine. I wish everybody a wonderful Purim, and if you didn't yet get your book, now is a chance. Okay, I believe we still have some copies left. You have all the information here that you need to know, and anything you need to look up, Baruch Hashem, is available in the Sefer.
You said that you don't do Avinu Malkeinu by Shachris?
Mincha.
You do it only by Mincha?
No, only by Shachris. You don't do by Mincha.